You know, we live in an age where basically any skill you could ever want to learn is just a YouTube tutorial away. But here's the thing. Does having all that information actually make us better learners? A lot of the time, it feels like the exact opposite. So in this explainer, we're going to cut through all that noise and get to the real strategies for mastering new skills, way faster than you probably thought was possible.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big problem every modern learner faces. Then we'll build the right mindset for success before diving into some really powerful active techniques. After that, we'll cover how to make sure that new knowledge actually sticks around, how to manage the whole process without getting burned out, and finally, how to turn learning into just a natural part of your life. So let's get into it.
All right, first up, the modern dilemma. It's kind of strange, right? We have the sum of all human knowledge right here in our pockets, but we still struggle to truly master anything. Why is it that having more information so often leads to less real learning? Let's unpack that.
I mean, this is the central paradox of our time, isn't it? We are literally drowning in a sea of tutorials, articles, podcasts, and online courses. The information is everywhere, but that path from just knowing about something to true, deep mastery, well, it feels more confusing than ever. It's like being stuck in a massive traffic jam of knowledge, and it's keeping us from getting where we want to go.
And you know, the solution really starts with understanding this one crucial difference. A passive learner, they'll read a chapter on economics. An active learner, on the other hand, reads that same chapter, but then they try to explain supply and demand to a friend, or they look for a real-world example of it in the news. You see the difference? It's like watching a cooking show versus actually getting your hands dirty in the kitchen. That shift right there is the whole game.
But hold on, before we get into any of the fancy techniques, we have to talk about the foundation. Because honestly, the best learning tools in the world are completely useless if you don't have the right mindset. Real learning isn't about what's on the screen, it's about what's going on in your head.
The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius figured this out centuries ago. The world outside is just a constant storm of distractions, notifications, and endless information. You can't control that storm, but you can control your own ship. And for a learner, that means building the mental discipline to just tune out the noise and point your attention where it really matters.
So, how do we actually build that kind of mental control? Well, it really rests on these three pillars. First is mental clarity, and that's as simple as turning off your notifications and finding a quiet space to think. Second is conscious curiosity. You have to actually want to know the answer, not just memorize it for a test. And finally, and this one is so important, intellectual humility.
The Stoic teacher Epictetus put it perfectly. He basically said you can't fill a cup that's already full. If you walk into a new subject thinking you already have all the answers, your mind is just closed off. Real, genuine learning begins the second you're able to say, you know what, I don't know this, but I'm ready to find out. That humility is the key that unlocks the entire process.
Okay, so with that mindset in place, let's get practical. How do we turn all this internal focus into actual external action? It's time to make that shift from being a passive consumer to a truly active learner.
So what even is active learning? Well, it's not just highlighting a book or rereading your notes over and over. Think of it more like a full-contact sport. It means you are actively doing something with the information. You're wrestling with it, you're simplifying it, you're trying to apply it. It's all about engagement, not just consumption.
And one of the most powerful tools for this is the Feynman technique. It is so beautiful in its simplicity. You just pick a topic, any topic, and you try to explain it out loud like you're teaching it to a little kid. The moment you get stuck or you have to use some complicated jargon, boom, you've just found the exact edge of your understanding. That's your knowledge gap. Now you know exactly what to go back and review to really learn it.
The Stoic philosopher Seneca knew that theory by itself is pretty much useless. Knowledge only gets its real power when you actually apply it. I mean, reading a book about swimming isn't going to save you if you fall in the water, right? You haven't truly learned how to code until you've actually built something that works. That's the ultimate goal of active learning, turning knowing into doing.
So you've actively learned something new. That's great. But now you've got to face the great enemy of every learner, the forgetting curve. How do you stop all that hard-won knowledge from just vanishing in a week? This part is all about making that knowledge stick for good.
Okay, this is a scientifically proven concept, and it is an absolute game changer for your memory. The idea is, instead of cramming everything at once, you strategically review information at the exact moment you're about to forget it.
Every time you do that, it sends a powerful signal to your brain saying, hey, this is important, and your brain starts moving it into long-term storage.
Think of it like this. Our natural forgetting curve is incredibly steep. We lose most new information almost right away. But each time you review that material at these strategic intervals, say after a day, then a few days later, then a week later, you're basically pushing that curve back up. You keep flattening it out until that knowledge is just locked in for the long haul.
And here's another powerful trick for attention: context. So your brain doesn't store facts in these neat little isolated folders. It builds a giant web of connections. So whenever you learn something new, you have to intentionally link it to something you already understand. Learning about the Roman Empire? Connect it to our modern legal systems. Learning a new programming language? Compare its grammar to one you already know. Every new connection you make just makes that information stickier.
All right, we've got the mindset and we've got the techniques. Now let's talk about how to manage the learning journey itself. This is all about working smarter, not just harder, and building that mental endurance you need to actually see things through to the end.
Now, for a piece of advice that sounds totally backward in our age of more is more, when it comes to learning, less is very often better. Trying to read 10 different books on one subject is just a recipe for burnout and a really shallow understanding. The much smarter path is to pick 2 or 3 of the very best resources and just go deep.
And this visual shows the difference perfectly. Over on the left, you've got the information grazer, someone who just samples dozens of different sources. What happens? Their attention is low and they feel totally overwhelmed. But on the right, you have the deep diver who focuses on just a few key sources. Their effort leads directly to mastery. It's the difference between knowing a little bit about a lot and knowing a whole lot about what actually matters. And finally, a really crucial piece of Stoic wisdom for the journey. Real learning isn't always fun and exciting. There are going to be plateaus where you feel totally stuck and moments of deep, deep frustration. The secret is to reframe that struggle in your mind. That feeling of difficulty, that's not a sign to stop. That's the sign that your brain is literally building new connections. Pushing through that resistance is where the real growth happens.
So, for our final section, let's zoom all the way out. The ultimate goal here isn't just to learn one thing a little bit faster. It's to build a system and a philosophy that makes learning a natural, continuous, and even joyful part of your life.
This is the final and maybe the most important mental shift. Learning isn't a task that you complete, like finishing a course or getting a diploma. It's a lifestyle. It's about approaching every single day with a sense of curiosity and treating your mind like a garden that you're tending to constantly, not just when you need to harvest something specific. So, when you boil it all down, what's the ultimate recipe for mastery? Well, it all starts with that foundation, a disciplined, humble mind. On top of that, you build with active learning techniques that force you to engage. You make it all last with consistent practice and spaced repetition. And the fuel for this entire engine, a relentless, lifelong sense of patience and curiosity.
Learning faster isn't some kind of magic trick. It's a skill. And it's a skill that you can absolutely build. You now have the complete framework, the mindset to get started, the techniques to make progress, and the philosophy to keep you going for a lifetime. So the only question left is the most exciting one of all. What will you master next?